So for this video, we're looking at the relationship between the trail elbow and the trail hand. So both of these golfers we have here, we're looking at the trail elbow and the trail hand relationship. We got our club golfer on the left hand side and our professional tour player on the right hand side. Now, when we look at the trail elbow and the trail hand relationship, can they differ? Well, obviously they're connected, so they're going to move for the most part in the same directions. What could we do, or how could we move the hand differently to the elbow? Well, let's look at the example on the left hand side and say if this player started to actually do some bicep curls. What you might then see is the hand start to move up and the elbow, relatively speaking, could stay in the same location in space. It wouldn't have to move around. So that's really what we're looking at, is when that elbow bone itself, the joint, starts to move around with the hand, do they stay moving in the same direction, or is there a disconnect very early in the golf swing? So if we look at this player on the left hand side as they start back, and we're going to get a trace coming out of the hand and the elbow joint, what we see early on is around about here where the elbow and the hand start to separate quite early. So the hand starting to work its way a little bit, as we see from that trace, a little bit more up and out. The elbow joint starting to work a little bit more in and up. So we do have a separation early slightly between how that elbow moves and how the hand moves. Now again, this can be influenced very, very largely by the other segments in the golf swing. We are simply taking one as an example. But if we see that differential right now, when that shaft gets roughly speaking to about shaft parallel, we can see that there is a gap, let's say, between these two lines, between how the elbow 3D path has gone and how the hand 3D path has gone in that very, very first section. We look to our professional player over on the right hand side, we move them back into roughly that same position, about shaft parallel. And we look at that same point in time and we see those two lines nearly connecting, but very, very close to being, let's say, on the same 3D path. So perhaps a little bit more continuity between those. Now, what really has created that, or what really has caused that, is the early elevation of this hand over here on the left hand side with this golfer. So we talked about early on about that kind of nearly that lifting up, that picking up and putting back down of that trail hand. Well, that's really what's happened here on the left hand side to perhaps an excessive amount, where it's created this separation. So this player on the left hand side versus the player on the right hand side, bringing them back to the very, very start again. This player on the left hand side has, for whatever reason, influence, intent, intention, belief, thought, okay, well, I'm going to lift this hand up earlier. And when they lift that hand up earlier, it causes this disconnect between the hand path and the elbow path. So the player on the right hand side has more the elbow and the hand raising at a similar rate, let's say, to get to that point in time. So as we work further into that backswing, what are some nice visual references we can get? Well, we actually see that connection now on the right hand side between those two paths. And later on, as we get to the top of the backswing, we create what I call this Y frame between elbow path and hand path. Now, everybody will be a little bit different in how they create this and how it would look. However, if we were looking on the player on the left hand side as we work them up to the top of the backswing, what we'll see as we get up top of the backswing is much more of a differential in this Y path, and the Y path itself is aiming a little bit more behind the player, while the player on the right hand side has a little bit more verticality to that Y path. Now, you know, where you'd want that to be in position, where you'd want it to actually look like in space, again, can be very, very different depending on the intention of the player. But again, just the width of that Y path on the left hand side between the hand path and the trail elbow would perhaps maybe potentially cause issues further down the line, because we know that's going to have to potentially be narrowed on the way down to create and get that trail elbow traveling closer to the lead elbow. We know those elbows come more together in transition, they separate late in backswing. However, on that left hand side, if we continue on as we come down, again we see that elbow and that hand path. Well, the elbow actually goes a little bit deeper, starts getting trailed behind the elbow path. So we see really the elbow path is further back, the hand path further down. We look on the right hand side, we nearly see the opposite effect. So the trail elbow path is now lower than the hand path as we get to that roughly same position in the golf swing. So again, as we're looking at these visuals left versus right, there's many, many different interpretations, many different perspectives you could take. And feel free to look at these and go, I see this, absolutely fine. This is, again, case study one versus case study one. What I would say is the pattern on the left hand side, I find that quite common amongst club golfers. The exact visual on the right hand side is not every player does this, every tour player does this, but it is still very similar to what we normally see in terms of the outlay, the overall pattern. Early on in backswing, hand raising, elbow raising, moving at similar rates. We'd see those 3D paths come closer together. Wouldn't really see every player have this joined position at that point in time, but late in backswing, we see that nice Y at the top of the backswing. So that nice Y that's created, as you see on the right hand side, this Y kind of access here that's created there, just in case you were looking, kind of wondering what I was talking about with a Y. But if we get into that position, and then as we start down, again, that nice lowering of that trail elbow before that trail hand, so we get that lovely kind of reaction as we get down to that position there, again, roughly in downswing. While on the left hand side, again, early disruption, early separation, elbow moving behind, hand moving up and out, hand raising at a quicker rate than the elbow, nearly kind of getting to the same position right about there, and then pulling in behind. So again, we get that kind of more scattered Y look. And then as we move in transition, again, this trail elbow, the rate of the elbow moving down versus the hand moving down, the hand moving and accelerating past the elbow a little bit prematurely. So just a nice little perspective in terms of looking at trail hand path, trail elbow path, its connection and correlation as you look into backswing. What do we see from really, really good players? Generally speaking, there's that nice symmetry between how the elbow joint and how the hand motion is moving. Club golfers, early separation, early differentials, hands doing different things than the other rest of the limb is doing. So just as a little guideline, something to keep an eye on if you're looking at that from this perspective.